I was cleaning his apartment when I found them, folded neatly between two books on his shelf, handwritten vows. My heart actually fluttered, stupidly. I thought maybe he was going to propose. We'd been together almost a year. I'd met his sister. We had weekend rituals. I knew how he took his coffee, and he knew I cried at animal rescue commercials. We were solid, or so I thought. But the name at the top of the letter wasn't mine. To my future wife, Emily. My name is Rachel. I held the vows in my hand, my fingers trembling slightly. My heart was thudding so hard I could barely hear anything else. It felt like someone had pressed pause on the entire world, and I was standing in the center of the silence, staring at the truth. Emily. Who the hell was Emily? I didn't cry. Not right away. My first instinct wasn't sadness. It was rage. Not explosive rage, but the kind that coils inside your chest like a slow-burning fire. I sat down on the couch and read every line. You brought me back to life when I didn't know I was drowning. Your smile saved me. Your love healed me. I want to wake up beside you for the rest of my life. None of this was for me. I had never seen these words, never heard this version of him. And yet I recognized his handwriting, the small loops in his letters. The way he dots his I's a little to the left. It was him. And it was recent. The paper smelled like his cologne. I didn't even know how long I sat there. Time didn't move the same way after that. I felt like I was watching myself from above. Like I had left my body, and someone else was wearing my skin. When he walked through the door an hour later, humming to himself, carrying a brown paper bag with Thai takeout, I looked at him and thought, he has no idea. He smiled when he saw me. Hey babe, he said, setting the bag down. Got your favorite, spicy noodles? I didn't say anything at first. I just handed him the paper. What's this? He asked, unfolding it. Then he froze. I watched his expression change, from confusion to recognition to sheer panic. He opened his mouth. It's not what you think. That sentence. God, that sentence. Why do men say that when it's exactly what we think? I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I asked one question. Who is Emily? His eyes darted, his jaw clenched, and then he said something I'll never forget. She was someone I used to love, a long time ago. I never sent those. I never gave them to her. I stared at him. But you wrote them, and kept them. He nodded slowly. Yes, I guess I never let go. There it was, the truth. Quiet, pathetic, real. I wanted to scream, but I stayed still, because in that moment, the sadness was heavier than the anger. How long were you in love with her? I asked. He hesitated. Years. Were you still in love with her when we met? He didn't answer. Silence. That horrible silence that tells you everything without saying a word. I need air, I said, grabbing my jacket. Don't follow me. And I left. That night, I walked for hours, through the city, past the places we used to go, past memories that suddenly felt like lies. I sat on a bench near the river. I wanted to call someone, but I didn't even know what I would say. My best friend warned me once. She said, he's charming, but there's something you're not seeing. God, she was right. When I finally got home, he was gone. No note. Just the takeout, untouched. I sat on the couch, the same place I found the vows, and I wondered, if he never let go of her, did he ever really hold me? To be continued. I woke up the next morning feeling colder, not physically, but inside. The apartment, once familiar and warm, felt like a stranger's place. His pillow was neatly fluffed, the bed perfectly made, just like he liked it. But he wasn't there. That empty space beside me on the couch felt like a heavy weight pressing down on my chest. I didn't know what to do. Should I call him? Text him? Wait for him to reach out? My phone lay on the table, screen dark and silent. My heart pounded, wild and uneven, as if it wanted to break free from my ribs. I finally picked up the phone and dialed his number. Ring, ring, no answer. I tried again. Same thing. With every failed attempt, disappointment pressed down harder. Suddenly my phone buzzed. A message. I wasn't expecting anything. My hands shook as I unlocked it. You found the vows? Sorry. The sender was an unknown number. I stared at the screen, confused and cold. There was no warmth, no apology, just a brief, chilling sentence. I read it twice. It wasn't from him. It was from someone else. Or maybe it was from him, but a side of him I never knew. I texted back, "Who is Emily? What does this mean?" No reply. Fear started to creep in, like ice crawling under my skin. I sat down, staring at my phone, heart racing. Why was he silent? Why did he leave me alone in this? His sister once warned me, "He's charming, but you don't see the real him." Now I was beginning to understand what she meant. I wandered through the apartment like a ghost, pacing the rooms where our memories still lingered, places where we laughed, argued, made plans. Now all those moments felt like lies sewn into the fabric of my life. Then, there was a knock on the door. I froze, unsure if I wanted to face anything else. It was his sister, Claire. She looked worn out, dark circles under her eyes, but she smiled weakly. "Rachel, can I come in?" she asked softly. I nodded, stepping aside. She entered quietly and sat on the couch. "I didn't want to get involved," she began, twisting her hands nervously, "but you deserve the truth." I held my breath. "It's complicated," she said, looking me in the eyes. "Emily isn't just some girl from the past." She paused, as if choosing her words carefully. "She's still part of his life." The room spun. I couldn't process what she said. "What do you mean?" I asked, voice barely steady. Claire looked down, ashamed. "He's been seeing her, behind your back." My heart shattered. "Why didn't you tell me before?" I whispered. "Because he's my brother. I wanted to believe he could change, but he hasn't." Tears threatened to fall, but I swallowed them. "Where is he now?" I asked, desperate. "I don't know," she said softly. Suddenly my phone buzzed again. It was a message from him. "Rachel, I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt you. Don't believe what Claire told you. I'll explain everything. Please just give me time." The silence around me was deafening. Could I trust his words? Or was it just empty damage control? That night the city drowned in darkness, and I finally realized something devastating. The man I loved wasn't really mine. I didn't sleep that night. I lay curled up on the couch with my phone clutched in one hand and the printed vows in the other. My eyes were wide open, staring into the ceiling as if it could somehow answer the questions burning in my head. How long had this been going on? Had I been a placeholder for someone else? Was I just the woman he stayed with while waiting for the past to call him back? Claire had gone home hours ago, but her words lingered like smoke in a burned-out room. He's still seeing her. I didn't know what scared me more, that she was right or that he might still be lying even now. His text buzzed again at 2:17 a.m. "Please, Rachel, let me explain in person. Tomorrow, I'll come to you." I stared at it for a long time before replying with 2 words. 1 hour. I wasn't going to sleep anyway. At 3:12, he knocked. I opened the door slowly. He looked awful, like he hadn't eaten or slept. His hair was messy, his shirt wrinkled, and there was a look in his eyes I hadn't seen before. Not guilt, not panic. Something closer to shame. He stepped in without speaking. We both stood in silence for a moment before I finally asked, "How long have you been seeing her?" His throat moved as he swallowed hard. "It's not what you think." "Stop saying that," I snapped. "Just tell me the truth. Did it start before we met?" He closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them slowly. "No, I swear. We hadn't spoken in almost 2 years. But then, last fall, she reached out." I felt my knees weaken slightly. I sat down, my arms crossed tightly over my chest, trying to hold myself together. "So you answered?" I did. I was curious. I wanted to know how she was. I thought it would be harmless. "Was it harmless when you started writing her vows?" My voice cracked at the edges. He looked down, ashamed. "I didn't write those for her," he said softly. "Not exactly. I wrote them after she reached out, but I didn't send them. I think I was writing them for the memory of her." That sentence made me feel sick. The memory of her. What about me? I had been real, here, with him. And yet I had become invisible next to someone who wasn't even around. "Did you sleep with her?" I asked, straight to the point. His head jerked up. His mouth opened. No words came. That hesitation told me everything. I didn't need the answer. I stood up. "You did." He took a step forward. "Rachel, it wasn't ongoing. It happened once, after a fight we had in December. Remember? The one where I didn't come home until 2 a.m.? I remembered. I remembered that night all too well. I cried into my pillow and told myself he probably just needed space. I blamed myself. He watched the realization spread across my face. "I thought I ruined it with you that night," he said. "I didn't plan it, I just felt broken." She was familiar. "You mean she was easy?" I said, the bitterness leaking through. He didn't argue. The silence stretched again, suffocating. "Is she pregnant?" I asked. The words came out quietly, almost like I didn't want to hear the answer. His eyes flickered. That half-second pause shattered me. "Yes," he said. And that was it. I didn't scream, I didn't cry, I just stood there, numb. I reached for the door. "You need to leave," I said. He didn't argue, he didn't beg, he just nodded like a man who finally understood what he'd done. As he walked out the door, something inside me cracked. I didn't know if it was my heart or my belief in love. When the door closed behind him, the silence felt final. I walked back into the living room, sat on the floor, and let the tears finally fall. The kind of crying that doesn't come in sobs but in silence, the kind that drowns you slowly. A few hours later, just as the sun started to rise, my phone buzzed. It was a new number. The message said, "I think you deserve to know the whole truth about Emily. I'm not who you think I am. Meet me at the Oak Cafe, 7 p.m. I stared at the message, heart pounding. It wasn't from him. The next morning, my phone was silent. No texts, no missed calls. I wasn't sure what I expected. An apology? An explanation? Maybe just a, "Can we talk?" But nothing. The quiet was deafening. I felt like I was drowning in silence, suffocating on unanswered questions. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the cold coffee I'd made hours ago. His words echoed in my mind. I never let go. What did that even mean? That he was emotionally tied to someone else? That I was just a temporary stop? I decided to call Emily. It felt insane, like I was stepping into a storm I wasn't ready for, but I needed answers. If he still carried feelings for her, then who was she really? The phone rang, once, twice, then a woman's voice, warm but cautious. "Hello? Hi, I'm Rachel." My voice cracked more than I wanted. "I think you know who I'm talking about him." There was a pause. Then, softly, "Emily." My heart sank. "I found these vows," I blurted out, "and he told me you were someone he used to love." Emily sighed, a sound like a distant storm. "We were engaged 5 years ago." 5 years. A whole lifetime ago, or maybe not long enough to move on. "He disappeared," she said. "No calls, no explanations, just gone." The pieces were falling into place. The love letters, the hesitation, the silence. "Did you ever get a real goodbye?" I asked. "No, and maybe that's why he wrote those vows. For himself, for me, maybe for both." Hearing this, something inside me cracked. Maybe he never really finished with her. Maybe his heart was stuck somewhere else, while mine was breaking here. I hung up, tears blurring my vision. I wasn't just competing with a ghost. I was competing with a past that hadn't yet let go. Later that day, he called. The voice on the other end was strained, like he'd been holding back a storm inside. "Rachel, I need to explain everything." I was too exhausted to say no. When I walked into his apartment, the air felt heavy, thick with things unsaid. He looked tired, older somehow. "I never meant to hurt you," he started. "Emily was my first real love. We were supposed to be forever." "But you left her," I said, voice barely steady, without a word. "I was scared," he admitted. "I thought I was doing the right thing, but I never stopped loving her. I just didn't know how to face it." His confession broke something inside me. I wanted to scream at him for the lies, the silence, the broken promises. But I just sat there, feeling hollow. "Why didn't you tell me?" He looked away. "Because I was afraid you'd leave. And maybe I was afraid to lose you too." I swallowed hard. Fear, love, guilt, they all tangled together in a painful knot. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept turning his words over and over in my mind. Could love survive secrets like this? Could I? I realized the real question wasn't about him or Emily. It was about me. Could I forgive? Could I trust again? The answer was nowhere in sight. And as dawn broke, I knew one thing for sure. My life would never be the same. The next few days were a blur, heavy with silence and tension. I didn't hear from him after that night. I wanted to reach out, to ask more questions, to demand answers, but something inside me kept me frozen. Maybe it was pride, maybe it was fear, or maybe the pain of what I already knew was enough. I went through our apartment like a ghost. Every corner, every memory, suddenly felt different, tainted. His coffee mug, the blanket we shared, the photos on the wall. It was like they belonged to someone else, or worse, to both of them. I kept replaying his words. I never stopped loving her. How could you love two people at once? Could you even do that? My heart ached with every thought. One afternoon, I sat by the window, the city bustling below while I felt paralyzed. I needed clarity. I needed to decide what I wanted. To forgive him? To leave? To hold on to the fragile hope that maybe we could fix this? The truth was, I was exhausted, emotionally drained in a way I hadn't been before. And then my phone buzzed, a message from him. "Can we talk? Please?" My fingers hovered over the screen. My heart screamed to say no, but my mind said yes. We met at a small cafe, one we used to love. The one where he had first told me he loved me. The irony wasn't lost on me. He looked different, not in appearance but in spirit. He seemed smaller, like the weight of everything had finally caught up to him. "I'm sorry," he said before I could speak, "for lying, for hiding Emily, for not being honest with you." I nodded, unable to trust my voice. "I thought I was over her. I wanted to be with you, to start fresh. But I was wrong. I carried the past with me, like a shadow I couldn't shake." He looked at me, eyes raw and pleading. "Rachel, I want to be with you, but I understand if you can't forgive me." I looked away. Forgiveness felt impossible, yet I still cared, maybe too much. "Why did you keep those vows?" I finally asked. He swallowed hard. "Because they were a part of me, the part that believed in love, even if it was broken." His words made me wonder if I was just a patch on his shattered heart, or if he was trying, somehow, to heal us both. We talked for hours, about everything and nothing, about love, loss, fear, and hope. When I left that cafe, I still didn't know what the future held. But one thing was clear: the past wasn't going anywhere, and neither was I. Love wasn't simple. It wasn't clean or easy. Sometimes it was messy and painful. But maybe, just maybe, it was worth fighting for. The days that followed our conversation were filled with an unsettling calm. Neither of us reached out as much as before. It was as if the weight of our truths had created a fragile silence between us, one that neither dared to break. I found myself lost in a maze of emotions, hope tangled with doubt, love shadowed by pain. I tried to focus on my own life, work, friends, small routines, but his presence lingered like a ghost I couldn't escape. Every song on the radio reminded me of him. Every place I went seemed to carry a memory. It was exhausting. One evening, I found myself wandering the city streets, the cool air brushing against my face. I needed space, a moment to breathe away from everything. The world felt so vast, yet I was trapped in my thoughts, circling the same questions again and again. Could I move on? Could I forgive him fully? Was there even a future for us? Or was I just holding on to a story that was already over? I remembered the vows. The ones he never spoke aloud but wrote down, the promises he made to someone else, and maybe to himself. They were like a puzzle piece that didn't quite fit in my story. But maybe that was the point. Love isn't always perfect or easy. Sometimes it's messy, confusing, and painful. When I got home, my phone buzzed. A message from him. "Can we meet? I need to show you something." My heart raced. Fear and curiosity warred inside me. I agreed. We met at the park, where we had shared so many quiet moments. He was holding a small box. "Open it," he said, voice trembling. Inside was a notebook, pages filled with his handwriting, letters and poems he had written over the years, some addressed to Emily, some to me, some just thoughts he never dared to say out loud. "This is everything I never said," he whispered. "I wanted you to see who I really am, all of me." I read the words, raw and vulnerable. His pain, his regrets, his hope for forgiveness. It was a side of him I hadn't fully known. Tears blurred my vision. It wasn't easy to forgive, but understanding helped. We sat there for hours, talking through what had been buried beneath silence, and for the first time in a long while I felt a small spark, a fragile thread of hope. Maybe love could survive its ghosts. Maybe hearts could heal. But the path ahead was still uncertain, and I was ready to find out where it would lead us. Some days were easier than others. There were moments when the weight of everything felt almost unbearable, like the wounds were still too fresh to heal. But there were also moments of surprising tenderness. A look, a touch, a shared laugh that reminded me why I had fallen for him in the first place. I noticed how he was trying, really trying, to be present, to be open. The walls he had built around himself were slowly crumbling, brick by brick. And for the first time, I felt that maybe I could step inside those walls without fear. But trust is a fragile thing. Every time he hesitated, every time silence fell between us, my mind raced with doubt. Was I just holding on to hope? Or was there something real here worth fighting for? One afternoon, he took me to the place where he had first met Emily, a quiet cafe by the river. He wanted me to see where a part of his story had begun, even if it was painful. Sitting there, watching the water flow, I understood that love is never simple or clean. It's messy and complicated, full of detours and regrets. But it's also what makes us human. We talked for hours, promising to keep being honest with each other, no matter how hard it got. And though the future was still unclear, we had chosen to face it together. Returning home that evening, I felt a strange mixture of hope and anxiety. Could love truly survive such shadows? Could we build something new on the fractured pieces of the past? He reached out and held my hand tightly. "Thank you for not giving up on me," he said quietly. His eyes held a vulnerability that touched something deep inside me. I squeezed back, not knowing what the future held but willing to try. In the days that followed, we both made an effort, sometimes stumbling, sometimes soaring. We shared our fears and dreams, our failures and small victories. Slowly, the silence between us began to fill with conversations, laughter, and even comfortable quiet moments where words weren't necessary. I learned to read the subtle signs of his moods and thoughts, and he began to trust me with his deeper feelings. We discovered a fragile new rhythm, one built on honesty and patience, not perfection. But not every day was filled with warmth. There were times when old doubts resurfaced like dark clouds, threatening to undo everything. I caught myself questioning whether I was strong enough to hold on to love that felt so fragile. And I could see the battle in his eyes, between wanting to move forward and being pulled back by past regrets. One evening, after a long day of work, we sat in silence. I looked at him and saw the exhaustion, the ache of someone carrying too much inside. "Do you think we can really make this work?" I asked softly. He took a deep breath. "I don't know," he admitted, "but I want to try. For you, for us." His honesty was both terrifying and comforting. Maybe that was what love really was. A leap of faith taken together. Without guarantees, only hope. As the city lights flickered outside the window, I realized that whatever happened next, we were no longer alone. We were navigating the uncertain path side by side. And somehow, that was enough for now. The following weeks brought a strange blend of progress and setbacks. We were no longer strangers to each other's truths, but old wounds sometimes resurfaced unexpectedly. One moment, we could share a quiet morning coffee, laughing over small things. The next, shadows of doubt crept in, threatening to pull us apart. I tried to remind myself that healing is rarely linear. Love, after all, isn't a perfect journey. It's a messy, unpredictable road. And sometimes, it demands patience, forgiveness, and courage. One night, after a difficult conversation about trust and past mistakes, I found myself awake long after he had gone to bed. The silence around me felt heavy, but it also made room for reflection. I thought about how far we had come, from strangers carrying secrets to two people trying to rebuild something fragile but real. I decided to write, not to him, but for myself. Pouring my feelings onto paper helped me sort through the tangled emotions inside. I wrote about fear and hope, heartbreak and healing. I wrote about the man I was falling for, and the parts of myself I was learning to accept. Days later, I shared some of those words with him. He listened quietly, eyes searching mine for understanding. "Thank you for trusting me," he said. "I want to be worthy of that." That simple sentence felt like a turning point. It was no longer just about surviving the past. It was about choosing to build a future together. Still, I knew the journey ahead wouldn't be easy. We had to confront our fears openly and honestly, without hiding behind silence or excuses. One afternoon, he surprised me with a visit to a small art gallery downtown. "I want to share something with you," he said, his voice soft. Inside, the walls were lined with paintings, abstract colors blending into shapes that seemed to tell stories of pain and hope. We wandered together, and I realized that the art reflected so much of what we were going through: chaos, beauty, struggle, and resilience. "It's like us," I whispered. He nodded. "Messy, imperfect, but real." Walking back through the bustling streets hand in hand, I felt a cautious optimism. Maybe love isn't about having all the answers. Maybe it's about walking forward together, even when the path is unclear. The tense early days between us slowly shifted into quiet understanding. We went through tough talks and vulnerable moments I never imagined before. Our past was no longer chains but painful lessons. One evening, as we cooked dinner together in his small kitchen, the simple, everyday tasks felt calming: the sound of dishes, the warmth of the stove, light jokes between us. It reminded me that love often lives in the simplest moments. After dinner, we sat on the balcony, watching the city lights flicker. "Are you thinking about the future?" I asked softly. He looked at the stars. "I am, about what could be if we keep trying and stay honest." I smiled, feeling a fragile hope. Me too. But even with hope, the wounds of the past sometimes whispered doubts in the quiet hours. Yet the choice to stay and forgive, that was ours. Weeks passed. We got used to our uneven rhythm, learning to balance holding on and letting go. One day, he gave me a small gift, a delicate pendant with a tiny key. "For you," he said, "a symbol of trust and opening the future." I touched the pendant, feeling it was more than just jewelry. It was a promise. Standing there, amid the city noise, I realized our story wasn't perfect. It was raw, tangled, and sometimes painful. But it was ours. And that was all that mattered. The days that followed were quiet but full of meaning. We weren't perfect, and the shadows of the past still lingered, but we chose to face them together. Each small step forward felt like a victory, a fragile thread weaving our broken pieces into something whole. I realized that love isn't about never making mistakes or never hurting each other. It's about choosing each other despite the fears and flaws, about learning to forgive and rebuild. It's messy and complicated, but it's also real and alive. One evening, as we sat watching the sunset paint the sky in warm colors, he reached for my hand. "Thank you," he whispered, "for giving us a chance." I squeezed his hand back, feeling the weight of everything we'd been through and the hope of what could be. No promises were made, no fairy tale endings. Just two imperfect people, trying to find their way through the pain and into something new. And maybe that was enough. Because sometimes, the greatest love stories aren't the ones that start perfectly, but the ones that survive their hardest chapters. We didn't know where the road would lead us, but for the first time in a long time, I was ready to walk it with him.